Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Advent Member Talks. My name is Sam. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Director of Member Experience here at Advent Coworking. We are a creative co-working community, podcast studio, event space, yoga studio, art gallery, but most importantly, we are a community. And I love this weekly event that we do. As you know, each week features a different member on the topic of their choosing. So I'm really excited today that we have Bridget B Sullivan joining us, and I'll hand it over to her in just a moment. But Bridget's going to be talking about how we can make our online events and our meetings accessible, which is such an important topic, especially right now when we're all virtual. So if you have any questions for Bridget throughout the talk, please go ahead, type those into the comments, and we'll do some Q&A at the end. So Bridget, over to you.
Thank you, Sam. And hello, everyone. I'm sitting in a black chair behind a white office desk, wearing a brown button-up sweater and a white turtleneck. I'm looking to my left as I've got a monitor on my left-hand side. Behind me on the left as well is my superhero friends, and my skin is of medium caramel hue, and I'm sporting an afro that has gray hair with subtle hints of auburn coloring. Why did I explain all of that in that way? Stay tuned and I'll fill you in. For those of you just joining us, after Sam introduced me, I described my surroundings. I also described what I was wearing. I also described what I look like. And the question is, why did I tell you all of that in the manner in which I did? Believe it or not, that's the beginning of a well thought out online meeting presentation that I'd like to encourage my fellow presenters, especially event profs, to adopt when they are made aware of attendees being in the audience who have a specific type of disability. I also took my time with my description, and I'm taking my time right now in case if we were at a virtual event and there were a live transcription service being used or a live transcription tool that the viewer was using on their end. These are ways, or this is just one of the ways when I made reference to the live transcription, to provide accessibility to both deaf and deaf and hard of hearing, and even blind community members who can visualize in their mind's eye as I am describing things. So let's dig in a little deeper on making online meeting and events accessible. In the United States, there are 61 million adults living with a disability. And the highest percentage of people living with disabilities is found in the South. This information is available to all through the CDC and/or the National Center of Birth Defects and Developmental Disabilities, otherwise known as the NCBDDD. Before we dig into the statistics as it relates to disabilities, I want to share an experience that we had during a live event, one that our company produced, where there was a speaker that was wheelchair bound. We had already booked this venue about 9 months in advance, which is customary. And at the time, we inquired about ramp access to the stage. After several inquiries about the ramp, they were installing, supposedly, we learned that the ramp was not a priority for them, and it wasn't something that they were really going to look into adding just for our event because we asked for it. So they said that we could go ahead and secure a portable ramp, which is readily available. However, by the time that we were informed of this and their decision, it didn't allow us enough time to secure the portable ramp and or have the necessary funds to do so. So we literally asked our speaker, who was wheelchair bound, if she would feel comfortable allowing 4 community members to lift her and her wheelchair up onto and off of the stage so that she could be a participant in our program. We were very intentional about making sure, or at least finding ways, that we could provide her the same opportunity we were providing all of our other speakers. This leads us to a bigger question for another day. Why aren't we as hosts, producers, venues, planners, you name it, selecting venues or building venues or being in compliance at a venue with ADA compliance in mind? Americans with Disabilities Act Compliance is what I'm referring to. This is really important, and it's something that we really need to keep in mind in all of the spaces that we gather in, especially if we are saying that our spaces are available to all. This also leads me to some additional statistics that play a role and are specific to the hearing and visually impaired community, as well as the wheelchair-bound community. These are functional disability types, and I did talk about the wheelchair-bound person, and that's at 13.7% of that 61 million adult number that I made reference to, and you're going to see me make reference to that again. 5.9% are people who have a hearing impairment, with 4.6% being blind or having serious difficulty seeing. So, how do we as event professionals address accessibility for the hearing and visually impaired community? It's the how when it comes to online and or virtual events. First, let's do a better job of maintaining awareness of the other humans in our community with disabilities who might thoroughly enjoy attending our events if we did a few of these things. Those other humans that I'm referring to are the 61 million adults that I referenced earlier. A few of the things that we can do is use accessible platforms. These platforms they have integrated tools for online meetings and virtual event producers that can choose these specific platforms to make sure that all of the technical tools are already within the platform itself. And again, I'll state it a little more simply. Use systems that have integrated captioning tools that show text of what's being said directly within the platform. You already know about Zoom. They came out with a new feature. They finally came out with a new feature that allows for live transcription or closed captioning. What about Google Meet? Have you heard of Blue Jeans? And YouTube, they even have the live closed captioning feature on their tool. Granted, none of them are perfect, so consider a fallback. The fallback could be a live transcription service. A live transcription service is where attendees click on a link to read what is being transcribed right there in the moment. Or you can use tools like Otter, Dragon, Happy Scribe is one, Google Docs, once again, if you use the speech to text feature, or Zoom's transcription, which I made reference to, but more importantly, if you use Zoom's transcriptions, you want to more than likely use those in your post-production process. When you put out your promotional materials and you say all are welcome, honor that. honor that in every way that you possibly can, and use language that will allow people to know that it is accessible. And what I mean by language, we encourage our community members with disabilities and deaf community members to attend. It's very easy to put that in writing. It's very easy to communicate that in a video promotional piece. Why not make sure that everyone who has an interest in attending your event has access to do so? Now that you have all community members interested in attending your event, what about online registration? Your online registration process should literally be asking questions. Questions like, do you require an ASL translator or interpreter? Do you require live transcription? Do you require another tool that integrates with your computer? Or do you require materials in advance of the slides, maybe in a larger font so that it's easier for you to read along while you hear what is being said? And any other accommodations. Follow up with anybody who inquires or requests or has a request for you to accommodate their needs when it comes to online and virtual meetings and events. We ask people about their dietary needs, so why can we not ask people on the registration form what their needs are? Because believe it or not, we don't know all of the disabilities that people have. Sometimes you can't see their disability, so be mindful of that. The next thing is moderate well. As a moderator of any event, you want to assign someone to manage the chat feature in case someone needs additional audio and or visual support. And what I mean by that, they need access to the live transcription link, or they need the person who is managing the chat feature to actually type in, as the moderator, what is being described on screen. And also as the moderator, you want to, from time to time, verbally reference statements within the chat, while speakers should be trained to be more descriptive with their delivery if they are made aware ahead of time. And more specifically, when I make reference to the moderator going into the chat, go ahead and state the person's name who made or stated the question so that everybody has full access to the information in that moment. And don't forget to set up your meetings or online events, allowing attendees the option to connect with call-in audio, because they may have an accessibility device that you're not aware of that could be directly on their phone, or they have it tapped into another device that provides them with a Braille readout. Ask questions. So I don't know where we are with time, but at this point, if you have questions of me, let's ask questions and I will be more than happy to answer. And if you want more details, you can even ask Bridget B, which is me, later on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bridget. This is such an important topic, and I was really excited when you emailed me, saying that this is what you wanted to talk about, because it's not a conversation that I've been seeing lately. So thank you. And yeah, for everyone viewing, please drop those questions in the comments. We do have a question from Charlotte. Let me pull that out. Hey. Do you have a screen reader program that you recommend?
That's a really good one. The reason why I'm going to say no exactly is because more often than not, the person, the user, is the one that is going to have their specific screen reader tool. And oftentimes when you are on your laptop, I think all of us have the ability to do this, we can go into our accessibility settings and utilize the tools directly on our computer. So I don't have one specific because every user is going to be different depending on the device that they're using. And some actually have tools that they integrate into their mobile device.
Yeah, thank you.
Great question, though.
Yeah, and I actually didn't even know that there was the mobile device attachments like that. So that's really good to know.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why Zoom specifically makes sure that when you do your Zoom invite, it comes with, if you select the feature, it comes with all of those call-in numbers. Because now on the mobile devices, you're able to take the speech, audible, anything audible, and it will get translated directly on the mobile phone into text for someone who is having the inability to hear clearly.
Yeah, that's great. And I actually signed into Zoom yesterday on my personal account, which is the free version, and got a notification that they'd be removing that service unless you were paying.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the other part of that too. For Zoom especially, it is a paid, you have to be on the paid plan for that. And I think on two of their other features, you do have to be on the paid plan for that.
Yeah.
But there are some other tools out there that you can use. But again, the user usually has full understanding of what it is that they need. And it's only those of us who are pulling together these events are going to really look to the live transcription feature, whether that be having an ASL translator on the screen along with whoever is speaking, or having that live transcription service taking place.
Absolutely. Charlotte had another question about, and Charlotte, I'm going to make sure to say your name now because this is what we're talking about.
There you go.
And I appreciate it because Charlotte always comes with such intentional and great questions to these talks. So how can you make your events more accessible for folks who are on the spectrum and or folks with sensory processing disorders?
That's a good question because the first thing that came to mind was lighting, right? So we have to be very mindful of lights. I believe there was a white paper, I believe, of a production company that had strobe lights, and it triggered an epileptic seizure for one of their attendees in the audience. And that white paper kind of went up the chain so that all of us in the live events community could better understand how important it is to be mindful of our lighting, the way that it is designed, and especially at the speed that it is delivered. That's not the only area to be mindful of when it comes to lighting, but you also have to be mindful of what's on the screen. Sometimes when you're creating your presentation deck, you may be utilizing various colors in your presentation deck that could trigger something for someone. So you have to be mindful of that. Now, are we as event producers and are we as speakers and presenters going to know everything that we need to know in order to be fully sensitive? Not just yet, unless we take the necessary steps to have conversations with the community members that fall under the specific guidelines that are ADA compliant, because that covers the spectrum of all of the things that we need to do as community members who are hosting events, building buildings, and all of those other things to make sure that everything that we do and everything that we put out is accessible to all to the best of our abilities.
Absolutely. That's a great point is we don't know what the community needs unless we ask and unless we're actually a part of the community that we're looking to serve. How do you know so much, Bridget? Where, because it's obvious that you've, researched this and have discussed this with many people, and obviously you can present on it. So yeah, how did you acquire this knowledge?
I'm glad you asked that. I was looking at the time, I was like, ooh, that went by really fast. So my career started in the hotel industry, and that was really my first exposure to ADA compliance related requirements. Because in the hotel industry, if your motel or inn or hotel is on one level, your compliance related requirements are based on the width of the door, for instance. Do you have handicapped parking, for instance? Do you have rails in the shower? And then it goes up from there. Are your elevators working? Do you have braille in your elevators? I mean, so the hotel industry was the first industry to introduce me into the world of events because I became a meeting planner. And from there, I went into the corporate arena as a meeting planner and ultimately an event producer. And then I went into the production arena and I learned all of the production side of managing and producing a large scale event. And I had the good privilege of working on 3 Olympic Games and traveling internationally as well as nationally, but internationally, in order to produce a lot of conferences for the medical device and data analytics community. And in every aspect, at every moment in time of learning the industry and working in the industry, we came up against conversations about how do we make sure that we're being mindful with the way in which we design our events, and how are we being mindful of being inclusive as well as accessible. So my years of experience is what has gotten me here.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that you had all of that experience. I'm like, can I just study under you on everything, please?
You
Uh,
are welcome to do so. And as a matter of fact, I do have some people in my past that I have mentored, and people from time to time will come and just shadow me so that they can kind of look over my shoulder and see all of the parts and pieces that are involved in putting on an event. And, we had this conversation, I think, last week with several other event producers is what's really the roles and responsibility in the event industry, and really fully understanding and grasping knowledge about each one of those roles, each one of those titles, each one of those levels of career and experience that you develop along the way plays a significant role in knowing who is a producer, an event planner, a wedding planner, all of those different types of titles. And for me, I've been fortunate enough to mentor people and guide them into better understanding as to what is actually involved in producing an event from a high production level.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think in a past life, I thought maybe I'd be a wedding planner, but I don't know about all that nowadays. But we have another question in. Um, this one is from Caitlin. So if you promise accessibility and you don't deliver due to tech issues, or perhaps some other reason, what is the best way to approach apologizing / making amends? And Caitlin gave an example, if you'd like that example. So the example is, I attended an event with an ASL interpreter, but because their mic was muted, their video feed was not actually included in the Zoom call most of the time.
Oh, wow. So that was totally technical. It wasn't that they forgot.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So, yeah, the best way to do that, I'm going to turn down my audio because I can hear myself a little too loudly. The best way to address that is to, hopefully there was a recording. Did I hear Caitlin say that there was a recording of the event possibly?
I
Let's jump on her hypothetical or
okay.
her real world situation. If there's a recording of the event, an online event or an in-person event, offer the person or whomever a copy of the recording. And with that, take time to transcribe the presentation so that if necessary, that person can read it while they're watching, and or the other way around, the person who can't see can hear it and it can go into their system and transcribe for them. Or read the transcription and then have it switch to speech, but they'll be able to hear what's being said. So one, if you can offer them the recording with the transcription, because you just never know who might need it. Yes, apologize and commit to doing better. It's hard to fix a technical glitch, but have a fallback plan. Maybe it's a matter of you having someone who serves as the moderator in, say, the chat field, or was this a in-person event, did you say, for Caitlin? Or was it an online event?
A Zoom call.
A Zoom call. So if there is a moderator for that Zoom call, they could very quickly remedy that situation by going into the chat comments and typing in as much as they possibly can of what it is that they're hearing. And it could be a direct message to that specific individual so that everybody doesn't have to read it if they don't want to. But in Zoom, you can do a private message to whomever it is that you want to speak to. That's another way to remedy it. But in the future, have a backup plan to your backup plan, and then another backup plan to that backup plan. For the work that we do at the level that we do it, we have about 6 or 7 different scenarios that we run, and then we have backup plans to every single solitary one of those.
Nice. So I don't know if this is a completely irrelevant question nowadays when we have so many of these systems that are just putting, like, integrating, these accessibility aspects into the product. But in the past, I have a lot of nonprofit experience. An excuse that I heard many times was it's not accessible for us to create this accessibility due to lack of funding and lack of money to hire, a translator or what have you. So I don't know, it's like, what do you say to groups that think they don't have the money to be accessible?
So that's really hard to answer, only because if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. But then I want to counter that with, there are free resources out there. For instance, if it is an online event, of course, I've basically mentioned Otter, I've mentioned a couple of different live transcription services. Even Google Docs has a speech to text feature that you could incorporate. Those are free. It's free, and again, if you are a nonprofit and you have the nonprofit paid version of Zoom, you can get that transcript and then go into post-production and, provide that if you need to. But I feel like I want to say, and I am going to say this, there's no excuse, to be perfectly honest with you, because there are too many people in our community that would be happy to do something that will support another community member if you ask them. And I have a feeling that more often than not, we as people in general have a tendency not to reach out and ask. So if they can't afford an ASL translator or interpreter, there are free services within that community and people who would be willing to help if they just asked.
I 100% agree with you. Yeah. Well, we've somehow already hit 5 o'clock.
Oh, yay, we did it.
We did it. If folks have more questions, which I'm sure they do, how can they get in touch with you?
The best way to contact me right now is on Instagram at Ask Bridget B. And if you're on Clubhouse, you can find me out there at Ask Bridget B. And if you're on LinkedIn, It's linkedin.com and all the rest that comes with that. Because I forgot what the whole URL is, but it's Bridget B Sullivan. And if you're here in the building at Advent, we're on the second floor, right next door to Queen City Nerve.
Awesome. I'm typing those into the chat. Oh,
Yay! See,
nope.
You're moderating and you're putting that information in there.
I know, and I'm like typing everything wrong. Like, stop tagging people, Facebook. Okay. So this video is going to go up on our YouTube channel, Advent Coworking Videos. So I'll make sure to include Bridget's contact information on there. So thank you, Bridget, so much for providing information on this extremely important topic. I hope that everyone takes something away from this to implement in their events. I know I for sure need to do that because I run this event every single week, and I know, so I'm probably going to hit you up, Bridget, for some pointers. So I really appreciate you. And thanks to everyone who's joined us today and to everyone who's watching this later. This is a weekly event that we put on, Advent Member Talks. Each week features a different member on the topic of their choosing. And next week, we'll have Kelly Logan, who's the owner of the Natural Gym, which just moved in next door to Advent, coming to talk about functional medicine. So I hope to see y'all then. And everyone have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the sunshine.